an explanation other than the default. Now, what happens if she never asks me that question? Or what happens if a child asks their parent that question and that parent either doesn't know the answer, doesn't know how to answer, is too concerned about, oh, how much do I tell my 10-year-old about oppression? Right? See, I don't sweat that because they're in my house, they hear about that all the time and we just work through it. But how many parents really know the answer to that? And how many kids wouldn't even think to ask? And if they don't ask, the default position of my child is going to be what? Well, these people are here in a neighborhood where the infrastructure is clearly not as well apportioned as this other neighborhood because there's something wrong with them. That's why they live in that neighborhood and not that neighborhood. So we have to understand that sometimes our attitudinal biases come not just because somebody taught us to have those biases, but because just the normal workings of the system do it. Now, having said that, there's a lot of other things that do it too, right? Marketing works, right? Marketing works whether you're trying to sell tennis shoes or whether you're trying to sell fast food products or whether you're selling racial stereotypes. There's this thing in marketing called the rule of 11 or the rule of 12. I always get it confused. But the idea is after 11 or 12 ads for a commercial product or for a consumer product, it's about the time that you're exponentially more likely to buy it. Right? So the first 5 or 6 times you're like, what? You know, by the time you get to like the 10th or 11th time, you're going, wait a minute, this is interesting. By the 12th time, you're running down to Taco Bell to get a Crunch Wrap at 6 in the morning. Something for which there was no lobby 5 years ago. Nobody ever wrote to the head of Taco Bell and was like, you know what we need? We need a taco wrapped up like a burrito, put an egg and some sausage in there and serve that to me at 6:30 in the morning. Nobody wanted that. But somebody said, watch this. I'm going to create the Crunch Wrap at 6 o'clock in the morning, breakfast style, Taco Bell. We're going to run ads, and pretty soon folks will be lined up around the block. I don't eat biscuits anymore. I eat Crunch Wraps now. And that's what they're doing because you saw the ad 12 times, 15 times, 20 times. Eventually you got, sort of interested in it. Well, let me tell you, we've seen the ads for racial stereotypes more than 12 times. We've seen the ads for sex and gender stereotypes more than 12 times. We've seen the ads for class and religious stereotypes with regard to our Muslim brothers and sisters more than 12 times, you see. So if marketing works, that's why they put the chocolate at the checkout aisle, right? At the grocery. That's not just because they had some extra chocolate. Right? It's not like they were just like, damn, I over-ordered the chocolate again. Where are we going to put the extra chocolate? I don't know. We could put it on the candy aisle. No, that'll never do. Let's put it up front where they pay, right? It's called impulse buying. That's why they put it there. And if that works for shoes and toilet paper and soap and toothpaste, trust me, it'll work for other things. So A, it's the working of the society making us default to those conclusions. And B, it is the fact that there are all these things that we're taught in a million different ways since we're very small children. I do workshops where I ask people, take out a piece of paper, write down all the stereotypes you know about this group or that group or this group or that group. Never once have I had anyone in the workshop raise their hand and go, I'm sort of drawing blanks here. Can't think of any. Can I Google it? Or can I use my phone? Can I look them up? Because I'm lost. Nobody has a problem. Now, they're all writing them down and then very quickly insisting, now, I don't believe any of these. These are not things I believe, but my Uncle Jim is all over this list. My Uncle Jim is a racist, but now, not me. But the fact that you even know them, according to the research from the field of social psychology, right? Brain science research says that just knowing about the stereotypes means it is highly likely that you can have them triggered in certain moments. So we have to own that. We have to be honest about that. One more thing before I end this little setup section is how we understand privilege. Very important. Right? We'll talk more about it as we go through the day. The problem, I think, when we talk about privilege, people get tripped up on this because most of us didn't grow up wealthy. And we've been led to believe that privilege is just about money. Right? So I was joking the other day with some folks, and it seems like every time, I talk to other white folks in particular about issues of white privilege, all of a sudden, like every white person is from Appalachia. All of a sudden, they're all from the hollers of Kentucky, and their parents were hardworking miners in West Virginia, right? Doesn't matter. You might not have even ever been east of the Mississippi River, but by God, you're from Appalachia when the conversation is about white privilege. Now, I got folks from Appalachia, so you don't get to claim that unless you get to claim that. That to me, we take that very seriously in my part of the country. But here's the thing. I know that most white folks didn't grow up with money. I didn't. I grew up in a 850 square foot apartment from the day I was 3 days old to the day I walked out the door to go to college, right? We ran cars into the ground, only had one at a time, never took vacations. I don't think my parents ever made more than $20,000 in a year, probably more like 15 or 16. So I didn't grow up with class privilege, but privilege is not just about economic status and material. I want us to conceptualize privilege, just like I want us to conceptualize racism as a system that oftentimes isn't intentional. I want us to understand privilege as something more than material. Specifically, I want us to think of it as a psychological edge that you gain when you have the luxury of being oblivious to other people's reality. I want us to think about it as a psychological state of innocence, and by that I don't mean innocence as the opposite of guilty. I mean innocent in the sense of naive, right? That is to say that we have the luxury of not thinking about some stuff as we go through our day. And it's no different than those of us who are able-bodied, right? Having the privilege, the luxury of not thinking about ableism in the way that our disabled brothers and sisters, whether visible or invisible disabilities, have to navigate the workspace or their place of worship or their school or their neighborhood or whatever it is, because they have obstacles and barriers and things they have to think about as they plan their day that the able-bodied don't. And guess what? That doesn't make us bad people for not thinking about it. Right? It doesn't mean that I'm intentionally oppressive to the disabled because I don't think about what they have to think about, but it means I have the luxury of being stone cold ignorant to other people's truth and suffering no immediate consequence for it, because my knowledge of their truth will not be on the test. And by that, I mean whatever the test is that you have to take to prove that you're competent to do something. So I want us to think about privilege as the stuff we never have to consider. And I'll end with a story that I think makes the point. I went to college at Tulane in New Orleans, and I wasn't a very good student. And I mean, I wasn't bad, but I sort of just coasted by and sort of pulled it out at the last minute kind of student. And so when I got to college, I already knew what I was interested in and what I wasn't.